So as we see the setup here for the Phoenix Mercury, they're going to be in horns, and they're going to be kind of working to invert offense with Natasha Cloud working out of the mid-post area of the floor and the other 4 players spaced around the three-point line. That's a stark difference from when it's WNBA that's the only player inside the arc that's manning the paint area and everybody else is spaced around. So we're going to kind of let this rep flow through and then we'll run it back. All right, and as we bring this one back and we kind of zoom in on the finer details. So we see Diana Taurasi is initiating offense. You got Amy Atwell at the right elbow getting ready to receive the entry pass that starts the offense. And then we see, obviously, WNBA at that left elbow spot in horns. All of those things are important to note because as the pass goes to Amy Atwell, the advantage that is having WNBA spaced outside the paint and even more so doing anything that's outside the paint, whether she's screening or she's standing in space, the value that comes with that is that the opposing center is not going to be one step away from the restricted area. That opens up more space to play with underneath the defense if you manipulate the space the right way. So their initial spacing is solid. Their respacing, when we get to the point where Natasha Cloud gets the mid-post pass, and that triggers the defense to react. And then their respacing and the manipulation of space around it, with WNBA then setting a flare screen in misdirection to hold the attention of the weak side defense. All of those things in a layered process happen in succession. Those are the 3 pillars of spacing, by the way. You got traditional spacing as a template, respacing around an action once it occurs, and then manipulation of space, whether you're emptying corners, setting flare screens, things of that nature. So we get to the point where you see the flare screen being set by WNBA for Diana Taurasi, and Amy Atwell's eyes also go that direction to make sure that the defenders over there are holding true to where they are at this moment and not taking away space from the primary action that's happening. You get the trigger here, the pass inside to Natasha Cloud, and now we're going to start seeing the defense getting to reacting. So initially you see a quick, basically 2-9 from the nail from Lee Yeru, just to make Natasha Cloud feel bodies and just show bodies in the paint and just generally in the driving areas of the floor. That's important to note. And then you see Natasha Cloud take this dribble, and then his next dribble is going to be where you really start to see the defenders reacting to what she's doing and where she's at with the ball in her hands. She has a smaller guard and Crystal Dangerfield on her. The Phoenix Mercury love to post up smaller guards with Kahleah Copper as well as Natasha Cloud. And the reaction that is getting here is one of the main reasons why. You see the dig from the top of the key from Rickea Jackson. Now you're going to see that followed in succession by Lee Yeru stepping again inside the paint from that nail area of the floor. And then you're also going to see Steph Talbot, who's guarding that strong side corner where Monique Billings is at the moment, start to commit to the ball more and more and more. And as I pause it here, you can already kind of see what's developing as I'm speaking. The moment that Talbot starts to commit to the ball, the angle is being conceded on leverage to Monique Billings to cut back door. And in addition to that, as you see Natasha Cloud holding 2 to the basketball at this point, you also want to pay attention to Lee Yeru, like I talked about. Because of WNBA being spaced to the opposite slot of the primary action, they're going to be completely stripped of a potential defender to help the helper. The initial helper obviously being Talbot, who's helping off of Monique Billings in the strong side corner. Lee Yeru is not going to be in position to help the helper or protect the basket and rim protection. All of that kind of adds up in real time. Advantage Phoenix Mercury, and that's going to be a bucket for Monique Billings on a well-timed assist from Natasha Cloud. Not exactly set up the same in terms of the presentation that is going to be set up with, but it's going to get a very similar result here on this rep. And this is just, again, speaking to the diversity of assisting from Natasha Cloud. It's not just the traditional bring it up the floor, pass it to a shooter working off a pin down all the time. Nor is it always working coming off of a screen and hitting a roller or hitting somebody else after the roller is helped on to knock down spot up threes either. it's a layered process for Natasha Cloud in terms of how she's being featured within the offense for the Mercury at this point in the season, but also how she's seeing the floor and how she's able to make plays from multiple spots on the floor, not just in traditional senses either. As we let this one flow through, you'll see another example of just that. So as we kind of bring this one back, you see, like I mentioned in the opening, similar elements of the rep that we saw prior to this one, but it's not exactly the same. So we see an initial handoff here at the top of the key. That's going to get the offense started. They go from 2 up top and 3 to the baseline to now you're going to see Natasha Cloud flow into an elbow touch. And that's the trigger of the action for the Phoenix Mercury, because the first reaction we're going to see here from Amy Atwell as she clear cuts is the spacing being manipulated. First thing first though, before we even get to that point, we see the switch up top. Now they have Crystal Dangerfield switched on to Amy Atwell, and now it's Kia Nurse who's now being tasked with guarding Natasha Cloud in space. And I want to bring it back because I mentioned the spacing manipulation from the Phoenix Mercury. Celeste Taylor, after she hands this ball off to Amy Atwell up top, is going to completely clear cut to that strong side corner. And now, first of all, even before I get to what I was getting ready to speak to, we're going to see 3 players in that strong side corner below the free throw line and below the break. That's 3 players spaced all the way into the corner, giving Natasha Cloud the ultimate real estate to work with. The complete right side of the floor is occupied by 1 player who's below the break on the backside of the action. That's obviously Kiki Herbert-Harrigan right there. And this is all important to note before we get to what we're getting to in terms of the action that takes place, because the elements of spacing, the initial spacing, the respacing, and now the manipulation of space and how they go about doing so. We talked about the first 2 layers in that process, and now the manipulation of that spacing. We're going to see here Natasha Cloud, again, being able to work against just 1 extra defender that can be used in terms of defending when she has the ball in her hands. Similar setup to last time, like I talked about, though they get into it differently. She's going to be able to dribble directly at Azurá Stevens, engage her. Right here is when she knows she's engaged Azurá Stevens. And at this point, she's holding 2 to the ball again for the slightest beat of a moment that allows for Kiki Herbert-Harrigan to cut back door, win on leverage. And now we're going to talk about the delivery of this pass. Because if Natasha Cloud is a beat off in terms of the timing of the pass, or a beat off in terms of the accuracy of the pass on the bounce, this is automatically a steal for Azurá Stevens. Stevens is anticipating being able to get back on the back door with her length, with her plus 7-foot wingspan. But Natasha Cloud times and is as accurate with this pass as could possibly be. And look at how this pass skips off the boards to Kiki Herbert-Harrigan. You can't throw a better bounce pass in location, in pace, or in timing of it than Natasha Cloud did here to burn Azurá Stevens on the backdoor cut. And again, like the last rep, because the opposing center is spaced a little bit further away from the restricted area than she would like to be, she's going to ultimately be a beat behind schedule on making this rotation to attempt to help the helper, advantage Phoenix Mercury, and that's a layup from the restricted area for Kiki.